Should you build it or should you buy it? For a lot of you guys, that is the question.
Moving to Southern Missouri is the best thing I've ever done for my family.
Welcome back, you guys. Today we are going to talk about the cost analysis of both building and buying roughly a 2,000 square foot home. And if you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to tell you when it makes the most sense to either build or to buy a home. So we're going to start this video off by talking about the costs of building. And to start that off, we need to start with the foundation, which is actually the land. In this example, we're going to be looking at small acreage pieces that would work for a hobby farm, roughly 5 acres. And unfortunately, the price of a 5-acre piece is way more expensive per acre than if you were to buy a larger tract. We all know that when you buy like a city lot, the prices are crazy. I mean, it can be like $10,000 for a quarter acre in a city lot, or way more, $30,000 for a quarter acre. So I don't understand, and no one could tell you an exact kind of line. When does the valuation of raw land go from that crazy inflated lot price to a more reasonable price per acre? And what I have found, and this is just very much in general because there's no absolutes in real estate, is that once you get to the 10 acres and above, that is when you start to generally see more of a reasonable price per acre, like the average price per acre in that area. But unfortunately, what I find for even 3 to 5 acre pieces, I tend to see those inflated prices. And I would say on average, what I see is that for the 3 to 5 acre parcels, you're looking at 2 to 3 times your average price per acre, just because it's still kind of closer to that lot designation. So today I wanted to look at Mountain Grove for where we're gonna build our theoretical home. I picked that because it's kind of like in between in terms of prices. So, you know, if you go farther east, you're gonna see things for much more affordable, depending. And if you go farther west, you're gonna see things much more expensive, also depending. But for example, like Mountain Grove, when you get to like that bigger acreage price, so like the 10 acres and above, for Mountain Grove, on average, you're looking at like $4,800 to $5,800. And then in like, let's say Rogersville, you know, parts of Christian County, you're really looking at like $10,000 to $15,000 per acre. And I wanted to just give you that kind of idea of like an average price per acre, because then I wanted to blow your mind and tell you what I was finding for 3 to 5 acre pieces in Mountain Grove, which was that those prices were more like $10,000 to $13,000 per acre. So I wanted to kind of show you that contrast, because when you're buying smaller acreage, it is much more expensive. Okay, so we're going through our kind of theoretical build here. Let's say that we want to spend $350. Maybe we've been approved for $450, but we want to keep it around the $350 mark. I've got a lot of people both shopping at that price point and also interested in building at that price point. So just to get your 5 acre piece, you're looking at $50,000 roughly out the gate. The next thing you're going to need to budget for is your road, unless it already has a beautiful road and a drive and it's all rocked. That chances are that's not going to be what you find. So I would say budget $2,000, and that's I do like heavy rock, you know, so that's going to be like, that's a driveway that's heavily rocked. That price, of course, is going to depend on just kind of the condition and the length of driveway that you need. I mean, some driveways are like miles around here, and some driveways are, you know, just short little jaunts. Some driveways need giant culverts and low water bridges and literally need some like engineering, maybe a few switchbacks. So of course your road costs are going to depend greatly on your location, but let's just give a kind of reasonable average and say that you need to budget $2,000 for your road. So if you got your land for $50,000 for 5 acres in Mountain Grove, I can tell you probably doesn't have a road and doesn't have any utilities. So to go through the cost of utilities, you're looking at, unfortunately, about $20,000 for your well. And that's just crazy to me. Just a few years ago, I used to quote people $10,000, and my little saying was, the Cadillac of well systems will cost you about $10,000. And now that won't even cover your casing. So it's gotten crazy. I have been hearing stories of it going up to 25 if you get into like a little bit deeper, like the above maybe 400 feet deep. It's pretty wild. I think you're safe to say 20,000, and that will cover like your whole system, you know, so probably your little shed, pressure pump, everything that you're gonna need. So let's say 20,000 for our well. Let's say 10,000 for our septic. That's what I've been generally saying. Now, can you do one for cheaper? Oh yeah, you can. And if you can do that work yourself, you're talking just a few $1,000s. But generally speaking, people want someone to do it. And especially if you're looking at like someone who does it right and is gonna put in a leach field, you know, 10,000, and that number can go up. Now, it's really hard to say what you should budget to bring electricity onto your property. I'm gonna say, just for this theoretical analysis that we're doing, I'm gonna say 3,000. So like if you're just dropping power, you're looking at just like, I don't know, $300. Maybe with your deposit, they usually make you have to deposit. I mean, maybe get up to like $500 or something, but super reasonable. But most of the time, power is close, but not on the property. So, and most of the co-ops will give you 1 or 2 poles for free. Usually 1 pole, but some of them will give you 2 poles for free. So with that, you have to have like building plans and be starting your build. Usually they want to see some sort of like work being done for them to put those 2 free poles in. But generally you're bringing power from somewhere, and that is something that you want your realtor, hopefully me, you want your realtor to make sure that that is figured out, whether it's even an easement granted or whatever. But if you want power, you really don't want to leave that to chance. Okay, so to recap utilities, we've got $20K for our well, $10K for our septic, and then we're going to give $3K to bring power and drop it and put it in a box. So we are at $33,000 for utilities, and honestly, that's kind of like average, and if everything goes well. You also can spend that alone just bringing power over. That's why it's really important that you have an honest realtor who will describe and do all the back work for you to figure out power before you purchase the property. Now, some good news with your building costs is that because you're in Wright County and in Mountain Grove, you do not have to pay for building permits. So you're gonna save some money there. And real quick, you guys, I just wanna pause the video for a second. If you are getting value from these videos, please like and subscribe. It truly helps to let YouTube know to push this out to more people and help the channel grow. And I super appreciate it. Okay, so you've spent $50,000 on 5 acres, you've spent $2,000 on roads, you've spent $33,000 on all of your utility installations, and now you're left with $265,000 to build. Here's where it gets a little painful. So the hard truth about finding a builder is that you're going to be hard pressed to find one who will build for under $170 per square foot. For some of you guys, you might be like, that's crazy, I can't believe it. It's pretty much true. Now, we do know an amazing builder, super old school. We think that he's undervalued himself. He can do $150 per square foot. He is 2 years out. So like right now, you'd have to get on his list. And if you want to, you know, get a hold of me, but you would be 2 years out to be on his list. And I also want to tell people that is for the lowest of the low finishes. And where I think a lot of people get confused too is they don't realize that just even like the littlest upgrades in your flooring and your tile and your cabinetry and all of your light fixtures, and the list go on and on of all those little upgrades, they really make a difference. And so when you're talking about, if someone's talking about their lowest, like if they're going to take their price to the lowest possible price per square foot, you are often talking about landlord finishes, as we call them. So we're talking like just maybe the cheapest glue down luxury plank vinyl flooring ever, the kind that it's really cheap when you see it. We're talking cheap, not solid wood cupboards, just down to everything. Think about when you go into, I don't want to say a C-class rental, a C or a B- class rental. Those are the finishes you're going to get. So with this imaginary build, I'm going to pretend that you find an amazing builder that does exceptional work for $160 per square foot, which is very hard to find. Not impossible, but very hard to find. Now, because he's an honest man, that is going to include everything. That's going to be the cost of your concrete work, down to your flooring, your cabinetry, everything. Be very careful and wary with contractors. Oh my goodness, I have dealt with so much, pretty much like fraud/theft with builders. And for those of you that are builders, I'm not talking about you if you have integrity, but you should know how bad it is out there. It is crazy. Make sure you know, and you have it in some sort of contractual agreement, exactly what finishing that building means, because there's all sorts of different ways that builders, kind of perceive that word finished. So if you have an honest builder, well, one, they're just communicating. Maybe they say, hey, I only take it this far, and then you have to hire this person for this finish work. But for the most part, a good, honest builder around here is going to get you everything from your concrete work and your foundation work to your roof, everything underneath, except for all of your appliances. So our imaginary house that we're building is going to be 2,000 square feet. We're going to get it at $160 per square foot, and that takes us to $320,000 just for the 2,000 square foot house. Now remember, we don't have a garage, a shop, our chicken coop or garden, or any of that stuff yet. And I'm sure you're already getting the idea that our hope of coming in at $350 is already blown out of the water. So with the $320 for the house, and then we had, I believe, $85,000 for everything else, right? Land, utilities, road. We also need appliances. I'm gonna say $5,000. Now, for sure, you could get appliances that are really old and dented and things like that, and you could spend half that easy for all your house's appliance. But I'm gonna say $5,000. So that takes us to $410,000 for a 5-acre piece and a 2,000 square foot home without any outbuildings. Now we're gonna contrast that with a home that's already built on the market. It's an older home. It was built in 2002, and it is an Ava, which I think is a somewhat similar market to Mountain Grove. It's both flourishing and also that kind of juxtaposition between, it's very rural and yet still has kind of an active metro. It's got, a Walmart and an Ace and things like that. So yeah, I think that they're somewhat comparable. So this home that's on the market is being sold for $329,900. But what's great about real estate is very often the asking price is not the sale price. Now, it depends on where you're at. It tends to be like if you're in that what is now becoming 30 to 40 minutes to Springfield, you are gonna be probably buying property for a lot closer to the asking price just because of desirability. Also, it's gonna deal with the individual seller's motivation, what they have into the property, what they need to clear the property to be able to move on. And all of those nuances are have to be considered with every different property. But chances are you're going to get some amount off of that asking price. Now, looking at this property, the one thing that I think that wasn't updated was the roof. So that would be something that I would be really looking at and kind of potentially using as a negotiation tool. But everything else, even down to a brand new HVAC, has been remodeled, and that makes this, pretty much as turnkey as new construction. Now, of course, it depends on how thorough, the contractor was with remodeling, but really by looking at a house, getting an inspection, you can get an idea of the quality of work. So, and if we're talking, that it's got new to newer double pane windows, if all of the big utility or like systems have been replaced, so we're talking the well is in working order and it's got new HVAC and all of those big things, and it's freshly remodeled, you're pretty much not going to have much, many problems, just like you won't have many problems with a new build. So saying all that, I would hope to get this property for $315. Now, I have no idea if that is real, you know what I mean? Now, I would also be looking at, so we're at 74 days on market. That's getting up there, but that's not super long. I mean, when the market has slowed, we were looking at like 45 average days on market. So that's not crazy, but we're just gonna say that we're gonna get this for $315. We're gonna get 2,750 square feet of home. We're gonna get 10 acres, most of it wooded, but with some cleared, probably like, I don't know, I'm gonna guess 2 to 3 acres cleared and the rest wooded. We are going to get a beautiful driveway that looks like it has really heavy gravel on it, which is awesome. It also has a beautiful like welded metal entry gate. It's got a pre-established garden, although unfortunately there's no pictures in the listing. And it's got a pergola, so kind of some sort of artistic outdoor seating. And you are going to get all that for $315 if they accept the offer at $315. So still with this example, you don't have much for outbuildings, but as you can see, and this is just an example I had to find pretty quickly. I mean, if we digged deeper, we could find even more value, but roughly you're looking at, with this comparison, buying something that's already built, you're saving about $100,000. You're getting almost double your square footage in your home. You're getting all of your appliances too, and you're getting 5 extra acres. So as you can see, the value right now in terms of where we're at in the real estate cycle is truly in buying pre-existing built homes. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I want to talk to you about when it makes sense to build. So here's where it makes sense for people to build. Number one is if you are going to do the work yourself, obviously. And those of you that are builders know this. These numbers, like $160 per square foot, that is not your reality unless you're building something so high end with very extravagant materials, and then maybe you're building at that price, right? But honestly, a lot of the builders I know, like talking to recently, one Mennonite family, all of these brothers come together and build, and they're building at $70 per square foot. Now, I mentioned that to an investor friend of mine, and she's like, I want to hire them. And I said, no, that's them doing it for themselves, right? That's not what they're going to charge you. They're actually going to charge you more than $160. So, but for themselves, they're at $70, and that's because one brother does concrete work, another brother does framing and a spray foam insulation, and then the other brother does, roofing, gutters, and finish work, and each one of them has a piece of the puzzle. So for those of you who are thinking of moving here and you want to buy raw land and you have some skill set, then building is actually a really good idea. The other scenario where it is a good idea to build is if money is not totally an issue. Personally, I would absolutely love to build a barn home, and I would love to be able to pick out like all of the details and just like the little details and like the layout and the finishes and all that. It would be so fun, but I know that it would be more expensive to do that than to buy something that is already built. But if I had the money, I would do that. And so especially like if you don't have a bunch of kids, like if you're maybe more in the retiree phase and it's like kind of not a big deal for you, you've got the money covered, it's like you could get a rental for a year, build this just amazing dream home, do it at your own speed. You're not worried about your kids and, all of their activities and all the things that are kind of complicated when you don't have like your home site. If none of that matters and if money isn't holding you back, I think building is a great idea. And quite honestly, I hope to do it someday. One of the ways that we're seeing people be able to afford to build out here is we are seeing a super big uptick in people living in junior barns. Now, it is almost all the rage. I have talked about it in like my prepper videos. I mean, you know what? First of all, it doesn't have to be a nightmare. And I would say, especially if you don't have kids. I have seen, I'm thinking of a couple that we used to be neighbors with, and they got a bigger one though. Some of those junior barns can be like 30 feet long, something like that. It was really nice. They put in like a loft bedroom. So kind of technically the way they had it, it felt almost like a 2-bedroom-ish, but kind of all open. But they had it finished like gorgeous. And I've been seeing people do that for Airbnbs too. And they feel just like any other sweet little tiny home like or cabin. And that can be wonderful. But where I warn against it is like the families who've got a bunch of kids and they're all trying to live in a junior barn and they're off grid and they're hauling their water. And also like it didn't get finished out super nice. So it's like plywood floor and all of that. Their water tank is a 100-gallon water tank and just all of that. It's like each one of those things is hard enough. And when you add it all together, what I find is like most of the people don't seem very happy. A whole other section of them don't last a year here. And then there's others that do last, and I have to admit, like their kids don't totally seem stoked or potentially well adjusted to society. So these are things to consider, right? And I don't, no judgment, first of all, and anything can be done to the point where it can be successful, any type of living, okay? I mean, heck, my parents to make it, to be able to build their home, which considering how slow my dad works, it probably took him like 2 years to like get something just roughed in. My family lived in tents. And my mom has a memory of like they were going through a flood and the tent was flooding. And she remembers all night she was holding my eldest sister Janine and like making sure she didn't fall asleep because she was so afraid there was water actually filling the tent. And she was so afraid that she would fall asleep and that her baby's head would like fall into the water. And they didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, to tell you the truth, if that was happening, I would have rather slept in a car, but whatever. My point is that I know plenty of stories of people roughing it to make it work, and anything is possible. You can totally do that stuff. I just will tell you, as a child who grew up in that, pretty miserable childhood memories. All right, y'all, remember, as always, all my information is in the description. If you need me to help you find a raw piece of land because you have an amazing skill set, or you're just incredibly brave, I am the lady for you. Or if you're looking for something pre-existing, something that's built, maybe you have to do a little remodeling, I'm your gal too. And remember, you can get a hold of me, whatever mode of communication is the best for you, whether that's email, call, text, or even a Zoom. We can set that up and get you moving to Southern Missouri and get you on the next best phase of your life, which is gonna be in Southern Missouri.